Boeing versus Airbus, the 737 MAX versus the A320neo. You know, it's the biggest rivalry in the skies. But when an airline needs to go out and buy a whole fleet of these jets, which one is actually cheaper? Well, the answer is a lot more complicated and way more fascinating than you might think. So let's peel back the layers and find out what really drives the cost of these incredible machines. Okay, let's start with the big, flashy number. If you were to look at the last official price list from back in 2018, you'd see this. $117.1 million. That was the official sticker price for a brand new Boeing 737 MAX 8. It's a huge number, and it's where our whole comparison begins. And for the competition, the Airbus A320neo had a list price of $110.6 million. So case closed, right? Airbus is cheaper by about $6.5 million. Well, not so fast, because in the world of aviation, there's this big secret that's kind of hiding in plain sight. And this is it. This is the one truth that every single airline executive, every industry analyst will tell you. Nobody pays list price. That massive number you see in the headlines, it's almost pure fiction. So yeah, that brings us right to the myth of the list price. We're going to pull back the curtain and see why those eye-watering figures are much more about marketing and setting the stage for a negotiation than they are about what a plane actually costs. Right, so think of the list price not really as a price tag, but more like a starting point for a conversation. I mean, first off, these numbers haven't even been officially updated since 2018. The real job is to act as the symbolic anchor for negotiations, and it helps when you're trying to secure financing. But they almost never, ever reflect what an airline actually pays. Because, and this is the key, they're always subject to enormous discounts. And just how big are we talking? I mean, we're not talking 10 or 20%. Try 40 to 60% off. That's the normal expected discount range. And for big airlines making huge bulk orders, the deals can get even sweeter. So the first and most important thing to do is just forget the list price. Seriously, just throw it out. Okay, so if the list price is basically fiction, then what's the reality? What do airlines and those big leasing companies really pay for these planes? Well, to answer that, we've got to look at the market value, the number that truly matters. And wow, the difference is dramatic. That $117 million Boeing 737 MAX 8, its actual market value for a nearly new one is closer to $52 million. Less than half. I mean, that gap between the public number and the real-world price is just staggering. And you guessed it, it's pretty much the same story for Airbus. The $110 million A320neo, it has a market value of around $58 million. Now wait a minute, look at that. All of a sudden, the tables have completely turned. Based on what airlines are actually paying, the Airbus is now the more expensive aircraft, by about $6 million. But of course, even that isn't the whole story. The final price is always a moving target. It depends on dozens of things. Like which engines did you choose? How many seats did you cram into the cabin? How many planes are you buying in the first place? And with massive backlogs stretching out for years, an airline that needs a plane now will absolutely pay a premium for an earlier delivery slot. But here's maybe the most important concept of all. The purchase price, that's just the down payment. An airplane is a 20 to 30-year commitment, and its real cost unfolds over that entire lifespan. This is what airlines call the total cost of ownership. Total cost of ownership, or TCO. This is everything. We're talking about the fuel it burns, the engine maintenance, the cost to train your pilots and mechanics, and even what the plane is worth when you finally sell it decades from now. You see, a cheaper plane on day one can easily become the more expensive one over its lifetime. This chart here really puts it all into perspective. The initial purchase price is just one slice of a much, much bigger financial pie. The largest operational cost by far is fuel. So how do our two rivals stack up there? Well, it turns out they're incredibly close. Both the MAX and the Neo are about 15 to 20% more fuel efficient than the older planes they replaced, which is fantastic. But the performance difference between them, it's marginal. We're talking fractions of a percent. So on the single biggest cost factor, it's essentially a tie. And when you look at other factors, the market has pretty much reached the same conclusion. The leasing market, which is a great impartial judge of value, charges about the same monthly rate, around $400,000, for both jets. And while Airbus historically had a slightly stronger residual value, what it's worth after years of flying, the MAX is now totally caught up. This tells us that the financial world sees these two planes as fundamentally comparable assets. So, if the real price is similar and the operating costs are so neck and neck, where does the real difference come from? Well, it's not just in the aircraft itself. It's in the entire system that an airline builds around it. This is the commonality advantage. And here you can see two very different philosophies. Airbus designed its entire A320 family with a shared cockpit. This is huge. It means a pilot trained on one can fly them all, which is a massive saving for an airline. Boeing's goal with the MAX was a bit different. They wanted a simpler update from the older 737s to keep training costs low. But because of some significant design changes, it ultimately required its own separate new training, which ended up adding costs for existing operators. And this really gets to the heart of it. This quote says it all. The cost advantage often comes not from the aircraft itself, but from the system that surrounds it. The savings you get from shared pilots, shared mechanics, and shared spare parts can easily overshadow a few $1 million in the purchase price. Okay, so let's bring it all home. After looking past the list price, analyzing the real market value, and diving deep into the total cost of ownership, which plane is actually cheaper? The real answer is it depends. There is no single cheaper plane. The best financial choice is completely relative. For an airline that already flies hundreds of Airbus jets, the A320neo is almost certainly going to be cheaper because of that fleet commonality. And for a loyal Boeing customer, the 737 MAX just makes more sense. So this is the real decision checklist for any airline. First, they ignore the list price and focus only on the final negotiated net cost. Second, they analyze the massive savings that come from fleet commonality. Third, they watch the lease markets and residual values to understand the plane's long-term value. And finally, they have to factor in how badly they need those planes delivered. It's a complex, strategic calculation where that sticker price is just the very first piece of the puzzle. Which leaves us with one final question, doesn't it? We've seen that nobody pays list price and that it can be a really misleading number. But it still serves a purpose, right? It's still the starting line for every negotiation. So after all of this, what do you think? Are list prices still relevant at all?